2024 is kicking off with a bang, and what better way to start the new year than with a trailblazer in the world of marketing? So, buckle up and get ready for this amazing conversation. A very happy new year to all our listeners. Welcome to yet another episode of Brand Talkies, where we believe in uncovering the stories behind the brands you absolutely love. I'm your host, Tamanna Chanana, and we have a wonderful first for the show today. Our first lady boss guest. I'm so thrilled to have you here, Tara. Just to give a brief introduction about her, she is an award winning marketing leader who leverages exceptional storytelling skills honed as a journalist to drive growth for major media and tech brands in India. Tara has over 15 years of experience working with leading companies like Netflix, Vice Media, and currently serving as head of marketing India at Duolingo English Test. She spearheads regional efforts focused on English proficiency test vertical, whereas she has established the brand as an innovator. Tara's impact is not concise to digital activism. She played a pivotal role at Netflix, overseeing the marketing strategies for the streaming platform series in India. Shows like Honey Heist, Stranger Things, Delhi Crime, Khaki, and other owe a part of their success to Tara's strategic brilliance, helping Netflix solidify its position as a market leader in Indian market. Additionally, in 2016, she co-founded Vitamin Stree, which is something I'm very fascinated about knowing, an award-winning feminist digital platform using impactful video and community engagement to promote gender equality. I'm so excited to explore Tara's unique blend spanning journalism, marketing, and entrepreneurship, focusing on how she produces culture-moving work that accelerates business while making a positive social impact. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the show, Tara. It's truly a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for such a wonderful introduction. I hope this keeps up to your expectations.
No, definitely it does. Especially when two movements are in a room, I don't think so. We need anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So let's start. Tara, you are an exceptional journalist. Skills have anyway taught you how to uncover compelling stories. Today, I would love you to come up with that insider lens and share your story. What made you Tara Kapur of today?
So I think for me, I've always been interested in the media industry ever since I was in school. So when I was in school, I was the editor of my school newspaper. I was the editor of my school yearbook. And those are productions. There's a process that goes into it. You're hitting the deadlines. Our school used to allow us to take an extra night, like we used to work in the night in case we weren't hitting our deadlines, which was really interesting. Like you didn't really see that happening when you were growing up. And I think I really enjoyed that process. Like I really enjoyed one, coming up with stories, the editorial angle, going and interviewing people, going through that entire process, and then finally putting it all together and getting a product out there.
Yeah.
But when you're in school, it's kind of single-minded in terms of what direction you think that means, right? So because it was a newspaper, I thought journalism was what I wanted to do, right? And because I liked multiple media, I was like, oh, I want to be a TV journalist, because my horizon was narrow, and that's what I thought the world, that was what my exposure told me I should follow as my path. So I did an English major after that. I went to journalism, and then from there, I became a journalist, right? Because that just felt like the natural. When I moved from education to the real world, I realized that actually journalism wasn't my calling. There was a lot that I liked about journalism, right? So when I started my career, I was a TV journalist and I was reporting for a show a bit similar to this. I was reporting and producing a show called Brand Equity, and that was covering the marketing and advertising industry. And for me, that was my exposure to the advertising industry suddenly, and I was like, I loved the way marketers came up with insights and came up with an entire campaign and what they were putting out. I loved the creative angle of creating an amazing ad that everyone was talking about. I loved the production timelines of, kind of getting a campaign out there. So suddenly it was like a eureka moment happened, right? Where I was like, hey, I think not journalism that I want as my career path. I would want to be in advertising and marketing because there's a lot of similarities in some ways between journalism and advertising, or at least content marketing. But the part that I enjoyed the most of journalism was actually storytelling in a certain way. And I think that comes out in marketing. So that's when I decided to make a pivot in my career. And I joined Supari Studios, which was an up-and-coming digital studio at that time. That's where I launched Vitamin Stree. That's where a lot of these big moments happened for me in terms of like developing campaigns, pitching to brands, building my portfolio of work. And then from there is where a bunch of the global brands happened for me. So post Supari, I joined Vice. And then from Vice, I joined Netflix. And now, like you said, at Duolingo. So quite a journey, but it all kind of ties in together in some shape or form.
Yeah, definitely a great journey. I would say one of the roller coaster journeys that I've heard after so long. So yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. What was your aha moment in your career when everything clicked and you realized you are onto something really big?
Yeah, I think for me, it was kind of that point where I realized I wanted to shift my career path, where I realized that instead of reporting and covering marketing and advertising, I wanted to be a person creating it. So I wouldn't say that there was one particular moment, but it was sort of through those progressive conversations, I started feeling really hungry for the next step, and I got a lot of clarity in terms of what direction I should move into. So it wasn't a particular moment, but I think it was during my period at brand equity where something clicked, where I was like, I'm on the wrong side. Like I'm in the right space, but I'm on the wrong side of the table, and I think that's kind of what I've pushed myself towards as I've kind of progressed in my career. But who knows what's next? I think, you get comfortable, you take yourself out of that comfort zone, you put yourself into something else, and then suddenly you realize that, hey, maybe what I thought was my calling is suddenly something very different, right? Like I made a very similar shift recently when I shifted from entertainment to education. And again, that was, kind of taking myself out of a comfort zone and putting myself into something where, and I love the discomfort. I actually love having these feelings of not knowing and then trying to solve a problem. And then once you solve that problem, that excitement and joy that comes out of that, I think is really amazing. So yeah, I don't know what's next, but I think one eureka moment for me was definitely during some interviews at Brand Equity.
Wow, nice. That's so fascinating because I have been in the media space myself. I know that what is the charm that you have in media, and then taking that entire courage to move out of that entire privilege that you get there and then move to another industry is a
Yeah.
whole ball game. I
Yeah.
do remember when I took a shift from HT to Whatfix. It was indeed a complete change that happened. But yeah, for sure. It's so interesting to know someone has the similar set of stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So the next round is called a buzzer round, where you have to answer these questions in one word or one sentence. This is basically to make sure that you are comfortable enough for the next round of questions that I'm going to ask you around the storytelling aspects. So let's go dive in. If your suitcase could spill the beans, what wild tale would it share from your last adventure?
So I don't think it would necessarily be a wild tale, but I think it would probably say that there's always space for something new. So I think for me, whenever I go on a holiday or I go anywhere, I always want to experience something different or something new, right? So my most recent trip that I actually went on a holiday was to the hills. I actually went back to where my school is, but I did something completely different. Instead of visiting my campus or doing something like that, I went on an art retreat and I painted, which I've never done on a vacation before in my life. Suddenly I'm packing a canvas with my art in my suitcase, which is now on my wall, So for me, you never know what that unexpected thing, like my suitcase is always going to be like, I don't know what she's going to bring back this time, but it's going to be something new. It's going to be something different. And that's something I try to do on most vacations is either eat something different, try something new, buy something I wouldn't typically buy, go through a new experience, try something different. I think that's always been my mindset when I'm on vacation.
Wow. That sounds like me. I think that sounds like a lot of marketers. All right. Awesome. Coming to the next question. If your bedtime stories were an animated character, how would it kick off with a classic Once Upon a Time story?
This is a hard one, but I think for me, it's going to be a little cliched in terms of what I'm saying, but I think it would be the girl who just kept on trying, so that whole idea of try and try again. My character would be that person who's always falling down, but always picking herself up and always going, that determination to sort of do what's next. I would see a children's book kind of building out around the girl who just kept trying, right? So that's been my motto in life. I think that's the childhood story my parents have told me forever, which is always pick yourself up, always keep trying. And I think the story would follow that kind of an angle for sure.
I think you should start writing a book around this. For sure. Young kids literally love. I do relate to that. It's something that you actually need at times. And that motivation to go forward till the time you achieve something. And then again, that satisfaction never ends.
Yeah. And you're always going to hit roadblocks, right? So
Yeah, that's
as
for
long as
sure.
that's the most important.
Yeah. And if you don't fall back, then you suddenly realize am I life on the right track? What happened? Why is everything so good?
Absolutely.
Okay. The next question for this round is, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
I think in some ways the superpower I would like would be invisibility. Like I would love to be a fly in the wall, and I think this is the journalism side of me in in a lot of senses. Like I'm always curious to know what was the conversation that was happening in that room that drove
Yeah.
this decision, or why did this happen, or how did this happen? And I think just having that invisibility to be a fly on the wall would be amazing. I would love that.
Wow, so interesting. Okay. The next question for you, this is the last one for this round. If you could like to change one thing in your life, what would?
I think I would have liked to have started some things in my life a little. I always feel like I'm running out of time for things. Like I wish there were certain things that I did faster or I started earlier in life. So and there were some things that I actually started earlier in life and then I forgot about and then I restarted in life and
Yeah.
again I wish I restarted it earlier. So I think that's my one regret, right? Like I knew I wanted to get into marketing and advertising, but it took me a while to get there and it took me a while to break out of a different industry and sort of make that move. So I wish I kind of pushed myself sooner. I wish I started running earlier. So I used to run a lot in school, but I only restarted it in 2014, and then
Mhm.
again I've kind of fallen off the bandwagon. And it's kind of like you just always feel like you're running out of time to do everything that you want to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just wish I wish I had some of my eureka moments earlier, basically.
I feel it's never late to do something.
Better late than never, for sure.
Indeed. Okay, coming back to the topic for today, I'd like to ask you some questions around telling. And since you have that kind of mastery in it, so let's just relate to your experience from Netflix itself. All right. Netflix has anyway mastered the art of highly binge-worthy content. What are some of the key storytelling tricks they use that most of the brands should adapt in their own campaigns?
I think for Netflix, what really works for it is just diversity, right? Like the fact that there's a story for everyone and it's a very diverse catalog of content, right? So, for instance, every person that exists out there has different preferences, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I love reality TV, but I also love a hard-hitting true crime documentary, and I
Mhm.
also love a really bingeable show like Stranger Things,
Yeah.
and I love our Desi content as well, and I would love to watch a Bollywood movie at the same time, right? And those are different ends of the spectrum, and I can literally go to Netflix and whatever my mood is, there's content for that mood. There's
Mhm.
content for the side of me that wants to be entertained in a different. There's content for my curious side. There's content for my just like, hey, I want to switch off and watch a mindless reality show. To my friends have been raving about this show. I should watch it, and
Watching.
I want to invest my time and effort to really see the craft of that content, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's the trick. It's just diversity. It's having options for everyone, and we all want variety. So I think that's what's worked for a lot of the shows that are out there.
Nice. And do you have any comment on the station that they do for their end users?
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, right? Like, it's the algorithm is super unique in the
Mhm.
sense that its recommendation engine sees that variety in your preferences, right? So even if you see my Netflix, your
Mhm.
Netflix and my Netflix will never be the same, or
Exactly.
anyone else's, right? Like, the
Mhm.
fact is that's probably the one product where me and my husband are very particular to make sure we
Mhm.
watch on our own profiles, because we're like, don't mess with my algorithm. And we actually will spend the time and effort to flip between our profiles to make sure we're watching the
Mhm.
kind of show I would watch on my profile and what he would watch on his, because it will recommend that variety, right? And if
Right.
you see my Netflix, it has the documentaries, it has the reality shows, it
Mhm.
has the best in class, so it has The
Yeah.
Crown, it has all of the top shows that are recommended to me. And then it does have some of like these feel good Desi shows, which I absolutely love, right? But
Yeah.
it's not recommending a lot of the stuff like the action and the space, like these crime shows that my husband loves, aren't recommended to me, but they're 100% all over his profile. So yeah, the algorithm also then works in terms of your preferences in a beautiful.
Wow. That's something I recently came to know. You know what? I was scrolling through YouTube about some of these case studies around how personalization can play a pivotal role for your marketing campaigns. That's when
Mhm.
I came across one of the person who was talking about that how even the banners can change
Yeah.
for different peoples. The entire yeah. So that was really interesting. And when we spoke, I was like, I'm gonna ask her this for sure because Yeah, definitely. It is very intriguing, and especially for marketing folks, it's very important to understand their customers to the ground level and make sure that the entire piece that we are floating outside should represent the brand and it should connect with them very clearly. So yeah, very well. Okay, you struggle the world of journalism and marketing. How can brands capture the that investigative, uncover the truth spirit in their own storytelling ways?
I think the core part of it, instead of, it's not even uncover the truth as much, it's about finding an insight, right? And I think finding an insight can come from anywhere. Some of them are edgy and dark, and some of them are just really simple, basic parts of life that people haven't discovered because they haven't asked the questions and they haven't really dug deeper to understand somebody, right? So
Yeah.
for me, the starting point of any campaign or any creative that we put out is to speak to people, so
Yeah.
whether it's 1,000 people or 300 people or three people, have to have these meaningful conversations to be able to really draw an insight out of what you're trying to do, right? When you write an article or you put out a story, you first find a peg.
Yeah.
You find your peg based on an insight. What is your peg? Your peg is the headline, right? When you take that same ideology to marketing, the peg is your insight that you're basing the entire campaign around, right? Like there's a consumer truth that you're trying to bring to the table and you're building your campaign around that, right? So I think the approach of how you craft and come out up with that insight is really beneficial if you follow the way a journalist would do it to uncover the crux of their story. So for me, that's something that I've brought to any campaign that I put out. And it's something that came very organic to me because, I've done this for a large part of my career, right? So I think really being able to hone in and be like sometimes I have to redirect my agency to be like, hey, of this entire presentation that you've put out, there was this one line on your deck that I thought was so powerful because that is the core insight. And then we've kind of repivoted our entire campaign around that because it's literally in front of you, but you don't see it, right? So that angle from a journalist, that attention to detail, finding that little gem in the middle of a haystack, I think is the part of how I think journalism and marketing can learn from each other.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And especially that eye for that detail is very important when it comes to making sure that whatever campaign you are putting outside should have a word, and whatever you are making, that word should have an impact. That's what
Absolutely.
I have learned throughout the years that I've been in marketing. But yeah, great. All right, let's go to next question. What is the most common mistake you see brands make when attempting narrative-driven marketing campaign?
I think they try to please everybody, which is a hard part, right? Like with a campaign and an ad that you put out, you suddenly are like, hey, but we should also speak to this demographic and this demographic because everybody wants to buy our product. And in that process of trying to serve everybody, you end up serving nobody, right? So I think that's the most common mistake that I see, where sometimes marketers want to make their creative risk averse. So they don't want to just have a strong point of view. They want to be neutral and they want to sort of just say one thing and hope that that one thing will speak to everybody. But I think that the strongest creatives are the ones that, like I said, have a powerful insight, but also know exactly who that insight is for and who they're trying to speak to. So I think being more specific and then targeting that demographic in the right space is something we don't see enough.
Yeah, that's so true. Because a lot of people don't put that kind of effort as well to
Yeah.
understand how exactly and what is the right geography. I've seen a lot of companies, what they do, they have a stagnant campaign across different geographies.
Yeah.
Whereas recently, have you seen McDonald's new ad? They have the same content, but in different, for Pakistan, the entire team that you'll see, they'll be wearing burqa and they were actually saying McDonald's with their wink over it.
Yeah.
It was really
Even
beautiful
Spotify
because
did an amazing job of this. So the Spotify campaign, when they were talking about different regional music for different regions, they
yeah.
created such a large variety of ads that
Mhm.
cater to that diverse portfolio of people that they were speaking to. And
Yeah.
music is so personalized, right? So
Yeah.
I think they did a fantastic job of something like that as well.
Yeah, I think different companies, different ideas come together and make sure that the people are really getting that kind of story and they're just based on their own geographical reason. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely it's a good examples to share with. All right, tell us about the most innovative content marketing campaign that you have seen recently, either from a brand or a customer. What made it stand out and as something pushing narrative boundaries, and you feel that okay, this is something which has literally put your nerve on it.
Yeah, I think one, like I wouldn't say it's necessarily pushing boundary, but I think it uses technology in a really innovative way. I think, like I said, the Spotify campaign was very
Yeah.
powerful. I loved the one they did recently where they put the artists on the billboards and really highlighted faces that you don't necessarily see in the forefront in India, right? Like singers have always been playback singers, they've always been in the background of the movies.
Yeah.
But I loved that they went all out with a from a billboard approach to celebrate music in that manner and celebrate the artist. I thought that was really powerful. I think the way that they do their year-end localization, that personalized year-end campaign of Spotify, the Spotify Wrapped campaign, I
Yeah,
think that's
that's
really well done because it uses technology, it uses data in a really smart way. And for some reason, it's the one brand that people don't find intrusive when they're pulling out your data in that manner. And then how they then elevate that onto billboards again, like the way they're like, this person listened to Mariah Carey, 100 times in one day or something like that. Like they find these really beautiful nuggets from their consumers and put it out, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
And like I said, the localized ads that they put out, I think also just had so much thought behind their campaign. Like nothing is done in a way that feels copy paste. It feels like there's a lot of effort and thought into everything that they put out in every shape and form. And I think the other one that was, it's not necessarily super recent, but the Cadbury Shah Rukh Khan campaign and how they used AI for Diwali, I think was a great campaign because that really made you feel something, even though it was using technology in a certain way. It was really smart, really played into Diwali well,
Yeah.
fell into angle of celebration really beautifully. So I think those are two
Yeah.
examples that stand out to me. One just in terms of everything they do, and one in terms of a specific creative.
No, no, definitely. They make a lot of sense, especially for Cadbury. Cadbury has their heart and soul into. You remember the one campaign that they started off, Meetha, what exactly was the name? Every celebration is with something on those terms. I'm just forgetting that particular name. And the way they actually marketed it was, matlab it was just like for every Diwali, if you want to buy sweets, you'll go and buy a Cadbury.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that was the kind of relation, especially for festivals like Rakhi and all of that. In India, they place it very, very
yeah.
well.
They're at the heart of celebration, which I think
Yeah,
is
exactly. It's damn good. And I love the way they position themselves. They know the emotion of their customers so well that now you really realize that a brand is nothing without your customer's mood. And you
absolutely
have to celebrate that mood every year. So yeah, thank you so much, Tara. We come to an end of this amazing conversation. And frankly, I want to do more of these conversations with you. This was so good. And personally, this would be one of my favorite, especially to
awesome.
start with the lady
Thank
boss.
you so
Yes.
much for having me, and I hope you don't say that to all your guests.
No, no, I don't. I'm
Right.
saying it on camera, so I truly mean it.
Good. Thank you
Okay.
for having me and great speaking
Yeah.
with you.
Truly a pleasure. All right, before we wrap up, we would love to hear one golden piece of advice from you for all the aspiring marketers. What suggest them and what should be the right way to go about it?
Awesome. It's a really simple one, to be honest, and it's to always have a learner's mindset. I say this a lot, but I truly believe it. And I think it's because the world we live in is changing so fast. It's so rapid in terms of how technology is moving. As a result, how then consumers change, their behavior changes, what they want changes, the products out there change. And if you're not able to keep up with that and keep up with understanding what's happening, keep learning, keep adopting new technology, you're going to get left behind, right? So I think it's essential to keep learning
Yeah.
and have an open mind in terms of where that learning comes from. Because sometimes I learn from my 4-year-old niece, right? Like, the things that she says, what she does, how quickly she adopts things, I think is fascinating to see. And I think a lot of times the way the world has evolved is sometimes you'll have a boss that is 10 years younger than you or more, but there's so much that you can learn from that person, right? Because they have such a different life worldview. So I think that's super important. I think if you have a learner's mindset, that's at least 60% of the work done for you because you'll be able to see things differently and just be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds so good because that is just a basic thing that anyone in any profession can follow. And trust me, when you say it, a lot of people will relate. One of the key things that people have forgotten was that learning was the average that was driving the entire force. And now, after
Absolutely.
COVID, people have started doing it again. So yeah, definitely that's a valid point. All right. Thank you once again, Tara, for an enlightening discussion. Listeners, we hope you are being inspired to stay on the top of the latest marketing trends. And remember, you can catch the BT show on your favorite audio platform, whether Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Amazon Music. If you prefer visuals, head over to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button for more exclusive content. Until next time, embrace creativity, innovation, and cutting edge of technology. The future beholds to those who shape it. From all of us at Brand Talkies, stay tuned. Sayonara.